Hey there, spacers. Welcome to another episode of the Space Revolution. My name is Rick Tumlinson. You can follow me at Rocket Rick on Twitter. And this is iRock Space Radio. We're part of the iHeart Radio Network. Tonight, we have a great guest, a good old friend, and works with an organization I'm slightly familiar with. His name is Sean Mahoney. And Sean has been around the space field for a long time. He's done a lot of different things, well known in the field. And, just a little background Sean went to Salisbury University, picked up a bachelor's degree there in psychology and marketing, which is interesting. And then Emory University, picked up an MBA in business and leadership, which he demonstrates all the time. And then from there, worked with the Commercial Spaceflight Federation, joined the board of Space Frontier Foundation. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then for several years, ran one of my favorite new space companies of the time, Maston Space Systems. Most recently, Sean actually became the chair of Space Frontier Foundation. And we're going to lead off with a conversation on that and understanding what that organization does. Welcome, Sean. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, sir. Happy to be with you. Always a pleasure to hang out with you and take inspiration.
Good. Well, I'm going to get some from you, as are the listeners today. So, look, Sean, we're going to wander around. We're going to have a great casual conversation on a lot of different topics, but let's start right now with the Space Frontier Foundation. As the listeners, some of them know, I was one of the co-founders with Bob Werb and Jim Muncie of a gazillion years ago, back in the 20th, as we like to say. But the organization has evolved as the field has evolved, as the industry has evolved, as society has evolved. Society as well. There's very interesting points we can talk about there. And you've come on to take the chair, take the helm, and help guide the organization as we go through this period of time into the future. But let's talk about the basics, because I don't spend a lot of time promoting my own sort of background stuff here. So there may be people who don't know what Space Frontier Foundation is. So, Sean, I've just walked up to you. All right. Strangely on the street, I'm saying, wow, you're wearing a Space Frontier Foundation shirt. What is that, Sean? Tell me about that organization.
Well, thanks, Rick. Let me tell you about the Space Frontier Foundation.
Why don't you do that?
At its most basic element, it is an organization of individuals who are working to advance the human settlement of space as rapidly as possible.
Wow.
And if that seems like it's a big long-term goal, it certainly can be. It might happen sooner, but there is a group of individuals who are doing the work now that will make that bright future happen sooner. And that's the group that I have the pleasure to serve now. And I've benefited from, I still find out today, areas that the foundation has influenced in before my time, that makes the what is today's space world was the future not that long ago. And to all of the people of the foundation from eras past, thank you. And it's really important. Not only so advancing the human settlement of space, that's an important one, but it's also important in the getting work done now that is, planting the seeds that are going to take a while to come to bloom. And as a nonprofit in the space field, we have the ability to think and act in a time frame that a lot of other organizations can't. They're not well suited to. A for-profit organization, if you're CEO of a company is spending all their time talking about 10 and 15 years out in the future and not getting the stuff done that needs to happen this quarter next year, that company's not going to survive. But for a nonprofit, that's where we can really play. And as much as possible, I'm taking my cue from you and the others who have done just tremendous work, especially when it wasn't abundantly clear to a lot of people why you were doing the things that you were doing.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been a long slog. I will mention we started in 1988, and there wasn't such a thing as new space, which members of the Space Frontier Foundation literally made up that word in the early 2000s. And it wasn't cool because you had to be part of the government. You had to be, an astronaut or something like that to even, have the credibility of talking about space. So a lot of us grew up in that period. And, we can talk at some point about the different battles we had and, take the bow that we always like to take for helping SpaceX and Blue Origin, which, much to the chagrin of some other companies or whatever, the aerospace industrial complex and all that stuff. But you've come in now, and what I found fascinating, or have found fascinating recently, was the foundation is still fighting those fights. I mean, we were taking on the establishment at that point. And mega aerospace. And now the foundation is fighting other battles,
Indeed,
as well as continuing carrying the flag for that. And I'd love to hear about that. What are some of the initiatives that are being pushed out by the foundation right now?
One of the things that the organization had done over the last decade is hosting that new space conference and being seen as one of the foremost advocates for entrepreneurship in a space environment. And that has gone from the thing that was just a bunch of a small group of dreamers to a pretty large industry, and that is having real impact on the industry and on the species. So it gets big fast. But one of the things that happened in doing that is we were successful. And so there were unmet needs that the foundation was able to serve. Now there are entire other industries that have grown up, programs that the foundation started that spun out, that became their own thing. And so it becomes a challenge now for the foundation to figure out, how do we make sure that we are still serving those important needs, but instead of just doing the same thing, how do we make sure that we're picking the areas that need the most help and that we can actually have an impact towards that future of the human settlement of space? And so that's been the question. We've been having that question for several years, and we've tried a number of different things, and we've had some things that have really resonated. And so now the question is, how do we take a good assessment of what we've got, and leveraging a very generous donation that has really helped us have some space, if you'll excuse the pun, to be able to think about it and to take our time in setting ourselves up to be a sustainable organization that can keep taking down these barriers and moving that future closer to today. So that's a little bit about what we have been doing. Where does that lead us? So I want to share with you and your listeners just before we get into the programs, the words that we use to guide our decision making.
Mm-hmm.
The Space Frontier Foundation is an organization of people dedicated to opening the space frontier to human settlement as rapidly as possible. The goals include protecting the Earth's fragile biosphere and creating a freer, more prosperous life for each generation by using the unlimited energy and material resource of space. Our purpose: unleash the power of free enterprise and lead a united humanity permanently into the solar system.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing like probably quoting some of your own words right back at you. But I go to that because it's really important to understand that all of the benefits that flow from space are going to be tied to this power of free enterprise. And if we want space to be more than a novelty, we really need to keep focus on that. This is not just a, hey, it's cool. This is about expanding the territory that human beings get to use to improve the human condition. I have never seen a rocket launched with money on board. I don't think we're shooting money into space. We're spending money here on the planet, and if we're doing it right, we're protecting this biosphere and unlocking more of those benefits. And that's the thing that gets me excited. I mean, I'll be honest with you. You read off some of my background. None of that included aerospace engineering. None of it included a stint at NASA. I was like most normals.
Mm-hmm.
I thought space was cool. And how I got into space was by chasing a thing that I have interest in and happened into the space industry. But what has given me is a slightly different perspective than some others. And that is realizing that it is cool. Don't get me wrong. But there is so much potential to really improve the human condition that we can get from space. So now, what are we doing about it? One of the things that I saw as an operator in the industry was it is still somewhat of a closed industry. And there are more ways to get into it, but it can be difficult to kind of get into the space industry for those who are pursuing a career there. And while it is great to have people of similar interests be able to work on a thing they're passionate about, it's equally important to make sure that you're growing beyond just your typical, pocket protector wearing lab coat scientist who wants to study space. And so the foundation has done a couple things and then kind of stood on top of the work that we've done. At number one, I will tell you, the Space Frontier Foundation for me was home. It was the place where, as an entrepreneur in this field, I was amongst supportive peers. We also, as an organization, set out years ago to say there may have been practices that were common in another era, but we're not going to keep doing behaviors that have fallen out of accepted practice. So, if you think space is all about like something out of Mad Men, it's not. And we took actions and said, you know what? We don't want people to get a bad taste from being involved. And so we put things in place early on to say, we're going to treat everyone well. And if you can't treat people well, then we'll invite you to leave. And for the most part, there weren't that. There are a couple of things here and there, but for the most part, people are like, that's great. And so now the industry is more comfortable and open and appealing. There are a lot of people that don't feel like space companies and space culture necessarily speaks to them. And so one of the things that the foundation did was put together a DE&I toolkit to help explain some of the pieces of how the industry can definitely better serve and bring more people in.
Well, let's take a break. I want to come back and talk about that because that's the current relevant evolution of the revolution, in a sense, right? So, hey, you're listening to iRock Space Radio. We're part of the iHeart Radio network, and in particular, you are listening to the Space Revolution. My name is Rick Tomlinson. I'm here with the chair of the Space Frontier Foundation, Sean Mahoney, and we'll be right back. Hey there, Spacers. Welcome back. You are listening to the Space Revolution. My name is Rick Tomlinson. We are on iRock Space Radio, a part of the iHeart Radio network. Our guest today is Sean Mahoney, chair of the Space Frontier Foundation. We were starting to have a conversation about the relevance of the kind of work that the foundation is becoming or has been a leader on today. And that gets into sort of the cultural, the inclusion type changes. Sean, you just used an acronym. How dare you? How dare you? It's not even a space acronym, which is kind of hilarious. DEI. Tell us what it is, and tell us why the foundation is most importantly, working on this area.
Yeah. So this is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it is the latest version of the progress that we're trying to make at a societal level, and this is the new updated version, and there's a lot to it, but at its core, this is about making sure that you not only have diversity of viewpoints, but that you have a system that is balanced, so it is stable. That's where the equity part comes in. And the inclusion is, it's not about just, getting people on the photo shoot for the cover. It's about really making sure that you're bringing not just some people along, but you're bringing everybody along. And I know that there's some people that think, oh, well, this is some sort of buzzwordy. Let me step past any of the culture war things that anyone might be thinking about it, and let's talk about what we're talking about in a real sense. And from a capitalist standpoint, I will offer you a story of another industry that had a bunch of really dedicated individuals that were very excited about their craft. And as they grew in social influence and popularity and dollars, some of that growth allowed for some behaviors that were not actually going to be all that inclusive. And so if you look at the tech industry and some of the challenge that industry has had with diversity and inclusion, and if you had a time machine, if you work in the tech industry, you had a time machine and could go back and tweak, make some changes and set some things up better for the future, one of the things you would probably do is try to make sure that you have a more inclusive workforce so that you're not having to to lose out on a whole lot of people and customers and partners. And so, to a certain degree, I see the space industry as having we have the benefit of seeing the challenges that the tech industry has had. We share similar traits, and we get to hopefully avoid some of the pitfalls that befell the tech industry. And so that's why I have personally invested so much in it, not in a, hey, let's go around and do a press tour talking about how awesome and inclusive we are, but just in doing it. And what the foundation has been able to do recently is to take action on some of these big ideas of, okay, well, how do we say it's important to get people working in space that aren't traditional space organizations or people. Great. Let's do it. And I don't mean just put out a press release. I mean, actually do it. And so one of the programs that we've been working on right now has 5 different universities that span the globe working together on a photovoltaic technology. So it has application not only to our space future, but also to right here on Earth. And the universities that are part of this alliance are intentionally ones that would not be the first 2 or 3 that are on your list of, oh, well, that's where you go for aerospace or space research. And it has not only provided a whole lot of great insight into the research and technologies that they're doing, but also is helping understand how organizations need to work together in order to do more of this sort of research and to make sure that we're getting more people involved in space. If the industry doesn't draw in more people, we'll suffocate from a lack of oxygen, and it will take much longer for us to reach that human settlement of space that we're working towards.
Yeah. So, first of all, short answer: why are photovoltaics? Who cares? What does that have to do with space?
Well, there is one really big power source. That's the sun. And anything we can do to capture and utilize that energy for all of us squishy humans, the better off we'll be. We use it to power our lights, and then, we can also power our cell phones and our rovers and everything else. So the better we can capture that sunlight and turn it into a resource that we get to use, the better off we're all going to be.
So you're talking space solar power?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So in space applications, you've got a problem of your local municipal power company does not provide power outside. So there's a whole bunch of really interesting things that you've got to balance when you're talking about working off of the planet. But there are also a tremendous number of applications of solar production and solar opportunities right here on the planet. So the more efficient we can, and there have been obviously phenomenal upgrades in our ability to convert that power from the sun, but the better we get, each improvement, each panel that's producing more power than the one before it is one less lump of coal or gallon of oil, or one less house that has to be cycled off of power or get a brownout. And so there are a lot of benefits from getting much better in how we do
you guys
solar.
you have a program where you're taking space solar power and you're looking at research on that. and
Yep.
then you're reaching out to not usual suspects to develop some research on that. So what else? What else is the foundation doing?
Well, we have another, and I'm going to cross promote here. Turns out that there are some really phenomenal people in podcasting, and we had a program we called Lift Her Voice, which was providing some additional support to some women that were doing space podcasts. And so there were 3 of them in particular that the foundation was able to provide some financial support for them. And in doing so, able to help make sure that we're continuing to reach out to more and bigger audience. So the New Moon podcast, Ignited Thinkers, and Mission Eve were the 3 that we had provided support for. And to be clear, these women are the ones doing the work. They're the ones that are out there creating the content. But we wanted to see if we could help amplify, make things a little bit easier as they look to expand their audience.
Okay, so space solar power, empowering women, generally being inclusive and pushing inclusive concepts.
Yeah.
What else you got? What do you got there, Sean?
Well, there's another piece of this there, and while we have several programs on the outreach and under the DE&I umbrella, there's other things that we need to be doing as well. One of them being giving space a voice in DC on Capitol Hill and with folks in Washington. And to be, space is really awesome, and we think it speaks for itself. But in that world, it's really important to say the things that are important to you, because if you fail to show up and say something, then the very busy people that are, a lot of them are trying their best to provide guidance and to lead, the various parts of our government, they won't even think about it. And so space can become an afterthought. And so one of the things that we do is a citizen outreach and advocacy where, and as a matter of fact, I'm heading up in a couple days for the next round, talk to people. And if you've never taken the time to go visit your congressional office in DC, it can be a little bit intimidating at first, and then you realize everyone up there is like packed in like sardines into a tiny office. And there's a lot of new people that every couple of years, there's a new batch of people that are coming in and are trying to advise members of Congress on how best to weigh in on issues. And so it's a perpetual job of educating and letting folks know why space matters and how it matters, and how it's not just about the slow motion video of a rocket engine firing, that it's really about some fundamental issues, and all of that in service to moving us forward, capturing more of that economic benefit for humanity.
So you guys, you have this thing that you're going to go do on the Hill. What are a couple of the topics you guys are looking at covering this year? Just curious.
I will attempt to not be too wonky. But first up,
let me stop you just for a second. This is Wonk Central. Don't expect people to know everything, but I can tell you there's a hunger to learn these things. So we're not necessarily talking to people that are already in the industry or things like that. Some of our audience is, but there are people out there who, like you and I were when we got started. They're excited. They love space. You know, they're like, oh my God, SpaceX, oh, Blue Origin, oh. But they don't know what to do with that. They don't know where to
Uh,
go with it. They don't know how to express it. So how do we let's talk some more about some of the topics that
yeah,
you're looking at working on, but also then maybe we can swing back and talk about how you take somebody from being a fan to being an activist.
yeah.
Okay.
Uh, the three biggest things, and I will
Yeah, yeah.
say them, and then we can discuss them. One, it's extending the learning period, which is essentially going to give the industry time to figure out what it is that we need to build before putting a whole lot of regulation on. Two, a some funding for a space solar power project so that the U.S. does not fall further behind. And
Hang on. So I'm just gonna break this down with you a little bit
yeah,
here now. All right. So let's talk about that second one first.
yeah.
Behind who? Who are we falling behind in space solar power? I mean,
Well,
come on, we're America, man.
we are. Um,
Okay.
I I will first point you to Europe and the UK
Mm-hmm.
that are already funding projects for a government level in space-based solar power, and
Okay.
there are other large countries,
Maybe such as
maybe such as China,
oh yeah,
that
heard of those
has an
guys.
aggressive, yeah. Um, and this is space-based solar power is one of those huge opportunities
Okay.
that, and I'll be honest with you, when I first got involved in this, people were like, okay, steer clear because those people are some of the crazies. They're not so crazy anymore. Turns out it's a real thing. And the basic idea of space-based solar power is put your giant array up in space and capture the sun before it filters through the atmosphere and before it has to deal with clouds and a rotating earth and all the rest of it. Capture that power and send it down here to power things on the surface. And you're going to say, oh, well, wait, that's a really long power cord. And there's technical stuff. It's microwaved and it's blah, blah. It's cool. It is not sci-fi. It's real. It's just a big engineering project more than anything else at this point.
Okay. And what was that
And
first one though? Go ahead. I cut you off. Go
well,
ahead.
it's important that the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
have policies that are supporting development of this new source of energy. I mean, if you think of it this way, if there was a rush of people into a new form of energy, do you want to sit out and let another country figure it all out and then buy it from them, or would you rather have the independence to be a player in the game and producing things yourself? And so while we could certainly say, hey, let other countries go and do it, this how space-based solar power develops is going to set the new world order to a certain degree here into the future. And so I put it in a similar category to other future energy solutions. But if you're looking for an actual green, non-pollutive source of power, you're looking at nuclear and you're looking at space-based solar because it's always on
Mm-hmm.
and it can provide a tremendous, tremendous amount of power. And I know we want to talk more
Okay.
about it. At some point, we got to go back to like the Dyson sphere and what this would look like in way, way crazy future. But for right now, that's one of the things that we're introducing and making sure that we're talking about up on the hill.
All
And
right. Well, we'll come back. We'll come back to the
we're
next
gonna.
one.
All right.
Hang on. I want to take a little break here. Um, yeah, you are listening to iRock Space Radio, part of the iHeartRadio network. And I'm Rick Tumlinson, your host for the Space Revolution. Here with Sean Mahoney. We'll be right back in a minute. Hey there. Welcome back one more time to the Space Revolution. My name is Rick Tumlinson, and you're listening to iRock Space Radio, part of the iHeartRadio network. We are continuing our conversation with Sean Mahoney, who is the chair of the Space Frontier Foundation. We were discussing some of the topics that he or the Space Frontier Foundation and some of their allied organizations are working on the halls of Congress here in the U.S. And Sean, before you continue, I will say this, that we do have a lot of international listeners, and I want to be very, very clear that one of the things I know with Space Frontier and most of the organizations is we encourage people in your own country to work on your government. This isn't like, USA Uber alles or anything like that. We believe in a united humanity opening the frontier. And so what you're hearing Sean talk about in Washington is about the U.S., but maybe you live in Sri Lanka or Japan or some other wonderful, beautiful country. Go walk the halls of your government as well. And with that, Sean, over to you. Let's go through the list. We did space solar power. We did regulatory for working with startup companies. What else we got?
Well, did you hear about that asteroid that landed out there in Texas near you not too long ago?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be a good idea if we had some way to kind of like pay attention to what's going on to know these things might happen? Oh, wait. We have such a program. There is a program called the NEO Surveyor, which is a space telescope, whose job it is, if once it gets deployed, is to look for those hazardous asteroids. And one of the things that we're doing is asking that members of Congress provide sufficient funding to get that program back on track, and can get some eyes up to make sure that we're finding out about some of these things before they hit the earth. And so that one is a particular one that has a funding request attached to it. But like the first one, that learning period extension, it's a policy request. It's saying, hey, give the industry the time. It's a $0 request, right? It's it is forbearance on putting too many constraints in place while the industry is still growing. And then there are certainly other things that the Space Frontier Foundation, in partnership with the National Space Society and some other space organizations, are advocating for. But there's a great balance there between things that are right now, we want to make sure, while other programs may have constituents that will speak for them, we got to make sure that someone says, things like the Space Technology Mission Directorate is really important. The seed corn for all this great space stuff that we're doing, we want to make sure that keeps getting funded. And, some of these other programs, make sure, these are cool. So those are not just cool, but like important. And so that's what we're going to be doing. And that's, one of the several things that we do. I will also say, to your point earlier, this is the US version of this, but we have members of the Space Frontier Foundation all over the world, and we get happy to be called upon to work anywhere where there's people that are interested in setting up forward-looking policies
Mm-hmm.
that will enable the sort of innovation that will unlock a bunch of that power. So, and it's always a delicate dance, right? There's the immediate term of needing, you need money, no bucks, no Buck Rogers, as the saying goes. But it's more fundamental to have the policy and the culture change that says, oh yeah, this is a legitimate way to meet not only national priorities, but also have capabilities that can be available commercially. And that revolution isn't over. It's still got a long way to go. But Rick, the other thing that we need to make sure that we're doing, so we've got immediate term things that we're working on. The next piece of our future, though, really needs to be, okay, what are those next gates, those next steps that the industry and the species needs to achieve in order for that future of human space settlement? And some people think, oh, well, why the heck would you leave? This is an awesome place. This is the only place that has trees and grass and stuff. And you know what? You're absolutely right. I'm not suggesting we need everyone to go settle space. But what we're talking about is gaining so much value, whether it's economic or otherwise, that people want to go. And I don't mean go for vacation. I mean go and live, because there is so much benefit to being there. And so, cool. And there's a whole bunch of stuff we're going to get benefits to everyone along that path. What do those things look like? What are the opportunities and the challenges on that path? And any work that we can do, and this is what I refer to as the inevitability framework. Eventually, human beings will have settlement off of this planet. The difference is the benefits that accrue to humanity. At that point, I want to pull as much of that to today as I can. And that's what we're doing. By accelerating, by making the future arrive sooner, we get the benefits of the future arriving sooner. So you and I have talked about this, and many other people in the industry. What are those things that are the steps along the way that will enable this brighter future to come to pass? And people tend to think in terms of science and technology, but there are some really interesting and big challenges that have nothing to do with the technology, but have to do with the humanity of extending society beyond the planet.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's a number of really interesting challenges. For example, what sort of self-governance model might exist as humans move into a new territory? If a new island pops up in the middle of the ocean, right, who gets to claim it? We have rules and things for that here, and maybe some of those rules have had some problems, and maybe we have lost some people and some economic benefit because we have a tendency to fight to get to the future. Well, maybe we should do some things to figure out what's a good agreement on when does the colony on the moon become its own political entity. And again, there are people that think about these things, and I'm not suggesting that we need a conference of everyone to solve this problem today, but we need to make sure that someone is paying attention to this and that we're laying the those cornerstones now that will enable us to avoid some of these problems. I only recently read the Foundation books by Asimov, and I don't think there's much of a spoiler here because I'm pretty sure it's in the first page or two. The idea of that foundation was to help humanity get through the Dark Ages. And I'm sure it's no coincidence that the Space Frontier Foundation shares that the part of that name there, and to help us get through this period until we can get to that brighter future. So,
well, hang on. Okay,
yeah,
you triggered me.
I know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not only not a coincidence. That's part of the reason we call ourselves the Foundation. And Mr. Asimov knew it and liked it when we told him about it before he passed away many, many years ago. So, yeah, I mean, you're looking at an organization here that is thinking far into the future, is also looking to facilitate the development of, let's say, space agendas that will allow us to achieve our goals, is dealing with the human side in terms of inclusivity, making sure that, if we go the right way and we bring everybody along and give everybody a chance to lead. So what do you think is the next step? What do you think is the next? We've got about 3 or 4 minutes in this segment left, but what's the next big one? Where's the Foundation, or you personally, or whatever? Where are you going to go now to grab the next thing? What is it? What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you a couple things I think it is, because in the spirit of inclusivity, I'm not just making this stuff up myself, and drawing people in to collect those inputs and make sure that we've got a pretty good idea and a map. One of the things is making sure that there is a path to in support of a commercial free enterprise system in the cislunar space. And by that, I mean beyond just Earth orbit to that broader space that includes the moon. And it's not a thing that we're the only ones talking and thinking about, but it is important that we bring attention to this cislunar space and how it is used now, because there's a bunch of companies that are planning on heading to the moon or on their way now. And while it's not necessarily in the headlines as much, it's going to be very soon. And this is where we need to, that's one of the things definitely to focus on. One of the areas for us to focus is also on the quality of space entrepreneurship. And by that, I mean, we've wrestled the locus of spiritual energy from, it has to be a giant national project, to something that can be done by people with a garage. But we also need to make sure we run the risk, if we don't check ourselves, of overpromising, underdelivering, and causing a real severe backlash on what the free market can provide. The free market does not mean free of any criticism or critique. And it's important for us to make sure that we're continuing to improve the quality of the companies that are coming up, and to make sure that rather than just focus on the starting of companies, we've got some attention to how the game is played. There are there's a whole lot of really interesting and difficult questions, but those are a couple of the ones that I know we're talking about, and the framework is this: what needs to be done? What are those major milestones? Who else is doing them? Who else is working on these things? Where can we have, as an organization, either have the strengths or acquire the strengths to have the greatest impact? And instead of just saying, hey, this is the thing we think is important, we're going to go run and do it, we want to make sure that we're picking the things where there's the greatest need and we can have the greatest impact.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, look, we're going to take a break, come back for our last section. And yeah, it's great. It's very cool. And I think there's a lot of great work the foundation is doing nowadays.
Thanks.
Very,
Don't go away. Come right back. It's a short break.
Yeah, like he said. You're listening to iRock Space Radio. My name is Rick Tumlinson, part of the iHeartRadio network, and we have Sean Mahoney, the chair of the Space Frontier Foundation. We will be right back. All right, Spacers, welcome back. I'm Rick Tumlinson. I made you wait for that one. At Rocket Rick is my Twitter handle. This is the Space Revolution, and we're part of iRock Space Radio, part of the iHeart Radio Network. Today, or if you're on lunar time, next week. No, we don't know. But we're talking to Sean Mahoney, chair of the Space Frontier Foundation. So, Sean, you've covered a lot of different stuff here. So I guess the question I think anybody out there listening has is, okay, this sounds great. You have a great organization. When's the next event? How do people get involved? How can they hook up? How can they do something? How do you join? How do you become a part of Space Frontier Foundation?
Well, there's events happening all the time. The next major event probably is going to be in the can by the time some of your listeners are hearing this, but we'll be in DC beginning of March. But
when's the next conference? Let's talk about it that way.
Next conference, we've got two that we're incubating right now for this coming summer, and perhaps another special collaboration in the fall to follow. I don't want to get too far ahead of my skis, but I will say one of the great things about space is it's really cool and people want to learn about it, and we're going to leverage that as we work with other industries and do some more mashups, some more collabs, if you will, and get the space industry out talking and having a kind of a joint meeting of the minds with some other industries. So stick around. That one's coming up soon.
Okay, I'm intrigued, man.
Nothing like a tease.
So what's the website address?
Spacefrontier.org. Spacefrontier.org.
Spacefrontier.org. All right.
That's us.
So really important questions now, which I like to ask towards the end of the show. I want you to visualize yourself. You're flying, in your case, let's see, you mentioned asteroids. So you're in your own spaceship. You're cruising around an asteroid. Like you're just whipping around it so fast. I mean, several thousand kilometers an hour. You can actually see the motion. You can feel it. You're looking out the window port. What music are you listening to?
Well, it would seem like that would be a great place for some Pink Floyd.
Okay, we just got married. Okay,
yeah. I it would seem to fit, especially if getting to kind of chill and feel like I'm tuned in with the universe.
Gotcha. And so the next question would be, um, was there a particular book that you read that lit you up early on in terms of wanting to get engaged in this field, in the space field?
I'm going to answer that entirely different than what you think.
Okay.
The Science of Influence by Robert Cialdini is a phenomenal book that talked about how human beings respond to our fellow human beings. And that has nothing necessarily to do with space, but has everything to do with encouraging me to go and leave my first career at a big company and realizing that wizards do exist, and it's the people who know how to use this power for good. And in those lessons about how human beings influence each other does absolutely carry over to the work that I get to do in space.
Wow, that was one of the more unusual answers, but I'm going to go with it because I understand. It's all about people. It's not about technology. It's not about space itself. It's all about people and life. Favorite movie?
Braveheart.
Favorite space movie? You could say Braveheart again, I guess.
No, yeah, no. I think the Martian.
Martian, got it. Okay. Growing some potatoes on Mars.
Yeah.
And then, and by the way, Andrew, I just blanked on his
Weir,
name.
yeah.
Andy Weir. We had him. We gave him an award at
yes, we did.
Space Frontier Foundation many, many years ago.
Sat right next to him, talked to him, and then the Kerbal guys, I think, was the same year. So, yeah.
Kerbal Space, we heavily recommend them. Great. And so let me ask you this: we've got this great future we're talking about and all of that. What would you tell somebody in school right now or out there in the world wanting to change careers like you did and get involved? What should they do?
Avoid the hedonic treadmill. All right, so that was a little bit overdone. One of the things that allowed me the flexibility to take some risks is in my earlier life, I had bought a car and bought a house, and then I was like shopping for the next car and thinking about the next house, and I realized I don't need another car or another house, and it kind of helped me reorient. So while I served as CEO of a space company, lived in a household with one car. I don't need a whole lot of the accoutrement to feel like I'm keeping up with the Joneses. And so by avoiding feeling like you have to compete on stuff, you can really buy yourself the flexibility to go do a lot of really cool things. So that would be one of the pieces. Earlier on, you really need to try stuff out, be willing to be wrong, learn, ask people if you've actually learned the right lesson when you think you've learned a lesson. There's an awful lot that comes from just putting yourself out there and trying stuff. And there's an awful lot that can come from asking nicely.
Cool. And obviously go hang out with Space Frontier Foundation.
Absolutely.
Hook up, try and work there with the organization.
Was that a set? Was I supposed to say, "Oh, we'll volunteer with the Space Frontier Foundation"? It's the best.
No. I think we had already done that. I just I love what your approach here is because you're doing general life lessons.
Yeah.
And,
Sorry.
and no, I actually do like that because it does apply no matter what cause you're getting into. If you're going to get
Yeah.
into space, great. If you're going to work on climate change, great. If you're going to, start your own company, great. Everything you just said applies across the board, and that's general wisdom. And I think sometimes we don't spend enough time on that. So I think that's absolutely fabulous. In terms of how you think we're doing and where we're going next, um, what excites you right now in terms of space?
Yeah.
In this
Thanks for
particular
clarifying.
answer, yeah, I just want to clarify that because I don't want you to say, "Well, I did get a
Yeah.
new car." But no, seriously, in terms of space and where where do you think where how do you think we should go? So
So
big picture, give it to me.
some of the things that I think are really exciting is the realization that space is not about the technology. It's not about the features. It's about the benefits. And more and more I'm hearing people talk about not how many gigawatts or ghibli bits or blah blah blah. The technology is really cool, but instead talking about what can that do for someone else? What problem are you actually serving? And I am really excited about it. I love the fact that I've seen more space companies talk about customer discovery and understanding what is an actual pain, and then the application of the technology and the innovation to those problems. And I know I may have just taken your question about a cool space thing and turned it back into a a business, a human framework, but that
Perfect.
is the exciting thing, because the flip side is, what do I think one of the biggest problems is? And that is, there is an echo chamber around space. And because it is so exceptional, we have a tendency to want to be in our own world. And we can't. The industry cannot survive and grow if all we're doing is selling space to each other.
Yes. Preachers and choirs.
Yeah. If you got a town full of barbers, that's great. You can just spend all day giving each other haircuts. But
I like that.
until you're exporting something out of that town, you got nothing. So
you got nothing. So the idea is to get the word out, to get the vision out.
Yep.
Go ahead.
And to translate, and this is one of those things, this phenomenal, when you say the word space, it automatically triggers in people. And I would love to see it light up on a fMRI or something, but it triggers some parts of the brain that thinks big, but also thinks far away. And so, like, one of the challenges that I'm personally dealing with right now is trying to figure out how to talk about the benefits of space without saying the word space. Because who cares, right? The fact that we have rockets that land, no payload cares what happens to the rocket after it's launched. After your satellite, your payload, your thing is off doing it. I don't care if you land or not. What I care about is the service that you provide and the cost. I care about those things, but I don't care about landing a rocket as the payload, because I've already gotten what I need. And if the industry keeps talking about how cool it is to land a rocket, yes, it's very cool. Don't get me wrong. Really freaking cool. But that's the sort of thing where we focus on what is the benefit that we in the industry can pluck from this tree and provide to someone else, and do it in a way that doesn't get sucked into we do these things because they are hard. Like, get out of that exceptionalism thing and just translate what we're doing in space into something that matters to someone.
Great. And I will clarify, because I know you totally understand we have to have reusable rocket ships so that we can open the frontier. The point you're making is different in that what you're saying is that's exciting stuff to us because we understand what it means. But what is really important for society, what really matters to the world, is what that space, that rocket ship, because you use ships over and over again, that rocket ship has put in space and what it does to affect humanity. Correct?
Yeah. I mean, what matters when people talk about Amazon? What is it that they talk about? They say, "Oh my God, I get my thing in a day and a half, and it shows up right on my door." You know what they don't say? "Oh my God, I'm so excited about the back end logistics and the automated warehouse and all of the great technology that goes into it." That's not what I mean. There's some geeks that might talk about it, but what matters to you as the person buying the stuff? It shows up. The same thing. We need to talk about the benefits that we're providing to the people that are buying from us. We need to make their lives better by using this stuff, and the stuff that we're using just happens to be space.
Perfect. So I'm going to quit obsessing about the kind of van that pulls up in front of my house. You know, is it a Ford? Is it electric? I don't care. Just get me the package. And I am humanity, just as you are. Yeah. Hey, Sean, awesome. Thank you so much. Had a great conversation. Really appreciate it. For folks out there wanting to get involved, it's spacefrontier.org. Go check it out. Get involved. Make something happen. The future is what you make it. And, well, what we're going to make right now, we're going to make our way out the airlock. See you later.